this first. The only thing that I want to add only became clear when I got here and decided to make a cup of tea. I would like to recommend that we let the housekeeping team clear out all the food in these cabinets that has a date, an expiration date, within the next 12 months. There is all sorts of stuff in there that is just ripe for a mouse or a critter of some sort, and rather than just the trash.
Pardon me, Lori, but who is the housekeeping team? I've never heard of that team before.
That's Julia.
That's Julia.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yes.
Okay, well, if Sean is comfortable with that, I thought maybe you meant the hospitality team and you were giving yourself a job.
No. Oh, Lord, no. I think we can probably keep the coffee and tea because that will last at least a year. But there are things in here like peanut butter, oatmeal, that
There's
sort
a lot
of
of peanut butter.
Yeah. So if the staff doesn't want it, let's clear all that out because I do not anticipate serving coffee or anything else for at least a good year. Correct me if I'm wrong during the discussion on reopening, but I don't think we're going to have coffee hour for a while. So
the coffee is very expensive. You can put it in the freezer.
Right. The coffee and tea I want to save, but everything else I think can go. That is the only thing that I want to add to the president's report. Elizabeth, anything to add to the vice president's report?
At the personnel meeting on Monday, it was I was asked to bring forward to the board to remember that when we create the new minister search committee, that the personnel, that at the beginning of that search committee, we use one of the projects is to write the contract for the new minister, because that goes into the search packet like we learned with the interim minister.
Right.
And at that point, we'd like you to make sure to make a note to come to the personnel committee, which is done, which is tasked with doing the research on that contract,
Okay.
so as you get good advice at that point. We all agree we have nothing, personnel has nothing to do with the search committee itself, and perhaps once again be referred to when the contract is negotiated, not as a negotiation, but as a what's the standard.
Yeah, great, excellent. We'll get out in front of it before we start putting it together. Thank you. Anything else? Any questions for Elizabeth? All right, if not, Stan, anything to add to the treasurer's report? No? Okay, looks good. Any questions for Stan? We have, under old business, we're going to talk about endowments and the Summit House loans anyway, so that's on the agenda already. We have no lead minister report, but this will be the final month that we have no lead minister report. Alex, anything to add or amend in your report? All right, and I did see you highlighted some portions of your report about.
Actually, I highlighted them, Lori.
Ah, okay. Thank you.
I was hoping that Alex might look at this and help me understand it.
Okay.
Right now, is that a question you have at this moment?
Yes.
So what is it you wanting to understand?
So it states, I am asking the board to take a stand to educate the congregation that you examining why you are delaying activities and what you will ask of congregants, both in details and in covenant. I just don't understand what you're asking us to take a stand about.
All right. Do you want to answer this now, Alex, or do you want to wait until we get to the agenda item on reopening? Wait. Okay. Let's just hold on to that. Put a pin in that, and we'll be back to it in a couple of minutes.
Okay.
All right. Any other questions for Alex?
But how about Beth? I can go in there and just tweak 2 words, and it may read more like an English sentence.
Oh, I didn't mean to comment on the grammar. I just wanted to make sure I understood what you were asking us.
All right. Next up, Director of Faith Development, Leah, who is on vacation this month. So we have no report from her. DAF, Sean, anything to add or subtract from your report?
Nothing to really, I guess a clarification. So the paperwork, I sent out the reporting before I met with the Finance Committee, and the Finance Committee has asked me to make some clarifications on it. One of the things is that we paid out a little bit over $10,000 to the Social Action Collection charities, and that was not reflected on the ending balance as of 6/30. So we're actually, instead of 5,000 to the good, we're 5,000 negative. That's still under the 31,000 that we had projected. And there is a couple other questions that I'm waiting till we get answers on the endowment for. So that's I'm just waiting on some clarification before I reprint all the paperwork and send it out again.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Any questions or comments for Sean?
I think one thing that people did send messages to me that they had trouble opening up Sean's documents. So we may have to figure out how to get people that don't have Google Docs a way to open up the documents easier.
Sometimes what I found when I've sent out my spreadsheets, especially the Excel spreadsheets, if you don't click at the very top, enable editing, it'll look like the page is completely blank until you click that button. So I'll try to send out a clarification when I send out those sheets again.
Okay, thank you. I know when you sent me the email, that worked for me. I know for one, it didn't work for Pam, but then I was able just to send her the Excel documents by themselves.
Okay, great. Thank you. Anything else for Sean? All right. The music report from the Director of Music. I don't see Scott here tonight. If you have any questions, please forward them to Scott.
On behalf of Scott, I do know that one of the things he's working on now is he had someone give him recommendations on how to record sound from the piano better. So he is working on getting some equipment for that. He's partnered with me on it.
Great.
And the piano wheels are fixed too. So.
Yes, I saw that, and I'm so grateful for that. I think Elizabeth and I noticed that when we were tidying up for Kelsey's wedding, and that looked like a huge project, how to lift it and get the wheels on, and so grateful that that has happened. Thank you so much. All right.
I know that Alex commented, and I'm not quite sure, when Scott sent me the report today, the title was Music Committee Report, but it's actually his report. So I'm going to delete Music Committee Report and just make it Director of Music's report.
Yeah, that seems more accurate. Thank you. Okay, the membership report was written. I think we have the exact same number of members this month as they had last month. And board liaison reports, volunteer coordinator. Elizabeth, did you have more to chime in with regard to that?
So I told Kay that we expected a quarterly report, not a monthly report. So she really is not expecting to report for another 2 months.
Great, thank you. That's wise counsel. The Glenn Short report was also written. I don't know how many people have had a chance to stop by church for any reason whatsoever since we shut down in March, but holy cow, you can't believe what the Glenn Short people have done. This place is amazing. Let's see, personnel. Elizabeth, you already said something about that. Task force to explore ordaining Leah. Pam, any updates? You also have a bit on the agenda as we plan the August meeting. Is there anything you want to add to your report?
There isn't. Thank you.
Okay. Any questions or comments for Pam in the meantime? All right. And finally, the music committee, that's not happening. Okay. Now we're up to the consent agenda. We have to approve the minutes for Oh, yeah, we have to approve the June minutes, which was last month. It's hard to keep what month and day straight. And Stan, do you want to read, do you want to make your motion?
Sure. I would like to move that we continue under the fiscal year 2020 budget until we approve a fiscal year 2021 budget with appropriate changes to account for the change in minister.
Got it.
So, second.
All in favor, raise your hands, please.
Is this for the whole consent agenda?
Yes, let's make this for the whole consent agenda, approving the minutes and also approving carrying over this budget until the new budget is approved, which should be in September. All in favor, hands up. I see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, Jim, you're not voting on this one?
You're muted.
Oh.
I'm abstaining until I understand more.
That makes sense. Okay, so we'll show all in favor with 1 abstention. Excellent. Thank you, everyone. All right. Moving right along. Up first, under old business, we need to talk about preparing for the phased reopening of church. And so Alex has sort of been rounding up groups and people and coordinating this discussion, as well as the Committee on Ministry and just people all over church. I think you have a really good representation, the Committee on the Medical Advisory Committee as well. So Alex, do you want to speak to this for a minute? I hope everyone has had a chance to read Liberty's, was it Liberty? You sent out a final version? Margaret, thank you. Margaret sent out a final version that was 5 pages long, and I lifted it up this afternoon. I have everyone had a chance to read it. I'm sorry, Alex, go ahead then.
I'm hoping that someone from the Committee on Ministry can speak for 2 or 3 minutes about what you hope the board will know and do. And then I'm hoping that Jim from the Medical Advisory Team can speak for a minute or 2 about what you advise the board to do.
All right. Someone from the comm first.
So I think Wes was gonna speak because he worked very hard on putting this together, and he worked very hard with Greg as well, putting everything together. And anyone else in the comm will also pitch in if any questions are asked.
Right. Wes then?
Sure. I hadn't planned to speak. I was just kind of here to answer questions over the document. So just in summary of what you all, I think, received in the packet is, fortunately, we have Greg Townsend on the Committee on Ministries, who I think everyone knows is an infectious disease expert. So he was able to give us a nice summary of the science. So we could kind of base our recommendations off of the latest science. So based on that science, we sent out Greg's summary to the members of the COM and to several other people that Alex had recommended that she described as people movers, people that might have some other thoughts on how to implement these things. The people that responded from that were Camille Thompson and Greg Amento. And I think those were the only 2 of the ones that we asked that responded outside the COM. So then Margaret sent something today. I guess some of the COM members that didn't have a chance to respond to the summary at first, or some thoughts that came later. That was an addendum that was sent out by Margaret. I guess that was yesterday, I believe. So in summary, I guess, let me actually pull it up on my screen anyway. In summary, I would say one of the big picture, I think, things that came out of all this was that there was a lot of concern about opening the church now. I think that when we first started on this job or task, I think there was some understanding that we were going to open. I guess the church had already had a couple of events, I think, that had been scheduled. and there was not really a clear policy. So after doing a lot of investigation and talking to several people, there was a lot of concern over opening it. I'll just two comments that I'll bring out where Camille Thompson pointed out that the next COVID response tier to which the Jefferson Madison Regional Library will progress still does not include in-person meetings. So she was surprised that we were even considering that. Michael Manto felt that phase 1 should not be implemented until the number of COVID-19 cases in the US was greatly reduced. Thought that this probably, at the time they wrote this would not be, probably before Labor Day. There was also some feeling in the COM and the addendum document that was sent out by Margaret that there were probably certain milestones that should be met, such as, I could pull that up, or actually maybe somebody else from the COM could speak to it, that certain milestones should be probably met before we allow people to come back for in-person meetings. Listed here, like one of the, it says public health markers for reopening church was number 2 on that reopening recommendations. 14-day consecutive decline in number of people testing positive for COVID-19 hospitalizations and intensive care bed use. And I think that means on a local level, at least a state level. When widespread testing is available, contact tracing available to track and spread of the virus, sufficient supply of personal protective equipment, meaning that what we can get at the church and what's available, and evidence that our healthcare systems have sufficient equipment and are not overwhelmed by the number of cases. So that's kind of the big picture. Is I think there's a feeling that maybe that we're not ready to a general feeling that we're not ready to reopen yet. Especially now, I think that things are getting worse. That being said, in the documents, and I won't read all that, but in the documents, there's a lot of specifics about who should wear a mask, in what situation should wear a mask. Things like everyone above the age of 2, inside, outside if you're social distancing 6 feet, protocols on how to sit apart from people, in which rooms, and air ventilation, and there should be 3 hours between meetings because the virus may continue to be aerosolized in the air and possibly be infectious. So I guess I won't go through the details of all of that in the documents, because there's numerous pages of all that. It goes from everything from what do you do? We came up with a plan to what if somebody tests positive, educational videos. But I guess that's kind of the big picture. So I know that I think everybody from the COM except for Margaret is here. So I don't know if anybody else has any other from the COM has anything else they want to say, or if there are some questions from the board about some of the details.
Mm-hmm. And before you guys, thank you, Wes. That was amazing. And so many hours of work went into that by so many people. So thank you so much. I'm hoping Jim can speak next. And Jim, there's a great document that you sent to me on the 12th, and I really super apologize that I only looked at it 45 minutes ago. And I think that only went to me and Sean and Lori. And it's where the doctors chimed in on what Wes just shared. So I think you have another layer of additional information to what Wes just shared.
Yeah, so I have to confess that I have an issue with version control here, because I think I got an original document to look at, and then I got what's been posted in the agenda for today, and then it also got the document that Wes was just referring to, which came both as a PDF and as a Word document, and has the various phases, red, orange, yellow, green. So I think it was the first thing I sent out, and I confess that it's hard to keep track of which version I asked the medical advisory team to comment on. Okay, and so among the medical advisory team, it's a bit of a hodgepodge of people that were willing to participate. I think early on, before we really had anybody had really looked at the issue, I think that in my opinion, the COM has done a spectacular job here, and I'm referring to what I think is what I believe to be the definitive document, which is the PDF that's drafted 713. I'm not sure how that differs from what's in the agenda today, but in any case, you know, so our medical advisory team, if you may remember, was myself and Margot and Karen Fairchild and Dana and Forrest Cowan. And it was kind of like who I could think of at the time that had something to do with a medicine, and the fact that Greg Townsend is on your committee probably puts all of us to shame, because he's the real expert in what we should or shouldn't be doing. So, you know, whatever a blood banker and a neonatologist and a trauma surgeon, et cetera, and an OBGYN have to say is not nearly the expertise that Greg brings to it. Having said that, you know, I think that the members of the medical advisory team who responded in my most recent, only a few of them responded. I think people are really busy, and I don't think have anything materially different to add, other than everyone recognizes that we have to balance people's physical health with their spiritual and mental health. But I think there was a sense that we should never compromise. There's not, you know, to sort of paraphrase what I think I read Greta said, there's not a compelling reason to meet at the church. We shouldn't meet at the church. And she went in a number of ways and talked about that. So I hope I'm paraphrasing you correctly, Greta. Mm-hmm. And so we don't have a lot to ask. I mean, there were some questions here and there, like why 3 hours? I didn't know why 3 hours was a magic number. And then I read ultimately the COM document much more in detail. And you guys have all this data from European groups that show this and that. So I'm like, you know, yeah, definitely, I get it. So I think that the medical advisory team served its best purpose perhaps 3 months ago. And I don't think we have a lot to add to such a well-crafted document that's been very well researched. I wouldn't presume to add anything to that other than I support it. Yeah.
All right, so I hope everyone had a chance to look. There's the long version is in the minutes, and then the 5-page final draft I sent out again this afternoon if you have had a chance to look at it. And it's really the 5-page final draft that sort of sums up what we need to do now.
This is the draft that has the date July 13th, 20th at the top?
Yes, that's correct. July 13th, 2020. Yeah. Let me pull up, there's my version of it.
You say.
And so I just want to make sure that I'm understanding.
Actually,
the committee is, the group of committees is recommending that we stay in lockdown until we hit these.
I think there's some questions.
Oh, I'm sorry. Is there a question? Oh, sorry. Wes, go ahead.
I think Wes and I have the same thing.
Yeah.
The final one should be titled Final COM Reopening Recommendations to the Board.
Right.
Okay, I'm not sure why it was dated the 13th.
Yeah, actually, if I can clarify, there's one that's dated that, and I think that Jim referred to. The first one that was sent out a couple of weeks ago, was the summary that I said. So there was Greg's scientific summary. Then we got the input that I said from a couple of the COM members that responded, and a couple of other people movers. That was kind of the original document. That was is kind of, I guess, the main document. The other thing that was sent out that you were saying is the final document. It's a little confusing because that document was actually kind of input from the COM after the COM meeting, after I already sent out the one that Jim saw. So that is kind of an addendum to the other one.
Okay, so this I just got from Margaret, and it's dated Final COM Reopening Recommendations to the Board. Yeah, and it's dated 7/13, and I got this from Margaret.
We just got it 2 days ago because I just posted it on the Google Docs. And I can share that if you want me to share it with everyone on this call, just to make sure. I mean, it's in our agenda, but I do understand that not everyone sees the entire board packet because it's 37 pages long.
But is that?
I guess the thing is what I'm saying is that doesn't stand alone. That actually, because although unfortunately there's some redundancy with the initial summary of inputs that we sent.
Right.
Yes, I do think
That's really supposed to be kind of an addendum to the original one that's labeled Summary of Inputs Regarding TJMC Partial Reopening July 2nd.
All right. So, Alex, go ahead.
That would be an issue.
Jude, did you have something you wanted to say?
the one that Margaret sent out is more of a final summary from the comm. We used the stuff that Wes had gathered from other folks at our comm meeting, and this is what we came up with, and then we sent it out to the comm members for further revision. So what Margaret sent to the board 2 days ago is our final version. It's not an addendum, it's the final version.
Okay, okay.
I'm sorry, there seems, the thing is on that, I guess we're having some issue in the comments, some confusion how that was supposed to be, because there's also many things in the first document that were not actually put into that second document. The first document was all the comm members and other people invited to give their opinion, but I think what happened is some of the comm got involved, had some thoughts after our last meeting. Right. So there's a lot of stuff that's in the original summary that's not in that one. So.
All right,
Brett, I think we summarized everything into this final one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wes, can you just give me your email and I'll share it with you right now so you can actually see what we're talking about?
Okay, and then Breck had a question, and then
I think I have it there, Beth. Thank you.
Oh, you do? Okay.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay. Breck, go ahead.
So I have three small questions, and I'll group them together. And then one is, it seems like the way that we're functioning at the moment would actually correspond with phase red and not lockdown. Is that the case? The second question is, the public health markers for reopening church. Since there's different phases, there's not a single reopening church. I wondered if there was some comment about which phase that was intended to refer to. And then I guess the last question that we'll all have to deal with is the process of making that decision to change from phase to phase.
Okay. Jim, did you have a question or comment?
It's going back to understanding two questions that are related. One is, is this board supposed to be voting on this today? And if that's so, I want to make sure we're voting on the correct version.
Okay.
I don't know what we're voting on.
Yeah, I think we're just trying to get some clarity where on this phased timeline we are. And if we are currently in a lockdown or if we're currently in phase one, I think we have to, look at our situation, and then what will trigger us to move up to the next phase.
So we're not voting on whether we approve this document and we'll adopt it. We're sort of past that. It's adopted, and we're trying to figure out how to use the document to understand where we are in the church. Is that a correct statement? Yes, question mark. I think the committee did due diligence, has come to us with a completely reasonable plan. I think there are questions that we need to address. First and foremost, where we think we are on the timeline. I tend to think that we're still in the lockdown zone because I don't see any groups meeting at church. I don't know. Who else thinks we're in the lockdown zone, and who thinks we're in the red zone at this point?
Well, in your report, you listed about 8 different groups that are meeting at the church.
Yeah. The yard sales meeting every week. We are only staying outdoors and making sure that there's not more than 3 of us inside at a time. So I think we're following these guidelines, but they're not lockdown guidelines. They're phase 1 guidelines.
Okay.
So
David and then Jim.
So when we were coming up with the red, orange, yellow phases, The red was intended to be groups of 10 or less meeting at specific times for a specific time period inside the church. The lockdown was having no scheduled groups of any size except for, workers, maintenance workers, and church staff. And so I believe, and anyone on the comm, correct me if I'm misphrasing this, that we were thinking that we were still in the lockdown phase, and that we were considering when to go into the small group or phase red phase.
Okay.
Sometime in the near or distant future, depending on what y'all decide. And then the orange and yellow phases, we haven't been fleshed out yet.
Right.
Haven't been, what's the meeting group, what's the large group, and that sort of thing.
Okay. So as you were drafting this document, you had us still in the lockdown phase, because that's what I understood, is that there's no scheduled committee meetings or whatnot. So even though there are people in and out once in a while, I'm here on the Zoom call. I think you were assuming that we're still in lockdown, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Jim and then Greg.
I had a very small point to make, which was that in response to what you were saying, Lori, that if people are meeting, it's not according to some official policy, it's a little bit of going rogue maybe. They're doing it and you're making an observation that there are people doing it, but doesn't mean that's what people ought to be doing.
Yes, I think that's something that we also need to discuss, is just random people wandering into church. Greg.
Yeah, so first I want to thank Wes. I mean, that was a terrific summary of the committee's work. And I also want to thank, so, I did do some of the background research, but there's actually the rest of the committee members who sort of took the science and then made recommendations about how to implement the science in a practical way in the church. And it was really fascinating to see how they did that. But I think that in terms of reopening and how we decide what phase we're in, we need some metrics. And I have put in the chat a really terrific set of metrics that comes from the Harvard Global Health Institute, which coincidentally they use the same color scheme that we have put together, the red, orange, yellow, green. And I think ultimately, we're going to have to use some numbers to figure out where we want to be. And I think that the document that I've texted everybody or put in the chat is a really great place to start, because it gives you some pretty solid numbers, and I think we can get most of that information from VDH, and if not from VDH, or some other places we can probably get it from. So I think that would be a really good place to look at to decide where we are, where we want to be.
Excellent. And that sort of leads into the question that I had. If I'm interpreting the recommendations correctly, that if we're in the lockdown, we're going to meet those 5 benchmarks that you have, including a 14-day decline in case count. Where are we going to get those numbers? We need to agree if we're getting them from Harvard. That sounds fine. You want to get it from Hopkins. You want to get it from whose numbers? And are we talking about a decline in cases locally? Are we talking about the state of Virginia, or are we talking about nationally? Because if we're going down nationally, but Charlottesville is a hot spot because the students are making it that way, then maybe we shouldn't open. So that was my take on it. What else?
So I definitely think we ought to use the local data to the extent that it is possible to get those data. We should use VDH data.
Okay. Okay.
And we can get data from our own health district, and we can get it pretty narrowly focused.
Right. So would you say a combination of both local and state numbers would be accurate, or do you want to just say if Charlottesville goes down for 14 days, that's enough?
So my vote would be to use the local data.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know.
Greg. would local data be just Charlottesville, Albemarle, or would it be the Thomas Jefferson Health District?
I think it'll be, I think it'll be difficult to get just Charlottesville, Albemarle. I mean, it's possible, but it would require somebody to put a lot of effort into extracting those numbers. And B, I think it would be better to use the health district, since there are some people who are attending the church who don't come from Charlottesville, Albemarle, and also what happens in Nelson and Green is going to influence what happens here ultimately. So I think it'd be best if we use TJHD data.
Okay, that sounds great. All right, more questions or comments here? Breck, and then Alex.
I just want to understand, because I think this is really excellent work, and I think the best part about it is the clarity that we can provide to the congregation about what's happening. What makes me a little uncomfortable are exceptions, and so to me, I think we need to be clear that we're either in lockdown and we're not having weddings or memorials, or we have specific guidelines for how those are being treated. But to me, it sounds a little kind of weird to say that we're in lockdown, but we are having some things that are happening.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I don't think we're in lockdown. I don't think we should say we are. I think we should say we are having gatherings that are exceptions, like the Glen Short crew, they meet. Dawn was there for most of the day today. The yard sale group, they're meeting. There's weddings, small, teeny tiny weddings. There's memorials. I mean, we can't say we're in lockdown when we're really not. And one thing that I want to say is, with the data that you all collected, which was so incredible, I mean, as a healthcare provider, I learned a ton from this. Even though I've been working every day since the lockdown, I haven't taken a day off. I mean, how in the world is school going to reopen when, I mean, it's like looking through all of this, there is no way that we're ever going back to church if we have to wipe every single surface when anyone touches it. I mean, I just found, I mean, I didn't enjoy it. I read it thinking, oh my God, we're never going back to church. But then when I thought about what I do every single day, seeing, 11 patients every day in my little office, I was like, yeah, we gotta, and if school reopens, like, I don't know. I was cringing a lot reading this huge document. But I do understand that data is data, and we're not going to reopen anytime soon. That's for sure.
Okay. Alex, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I have a few different comments, and I'll start with, I want to ask the board to envision lay leadership in an entirely different way, and that what it means to train lay leaders is going to be much more of a life and death matter than it ever has. And so, for example, in the history of our congregation, some of the most rigorous and focused trainings have come when Leah trains RE people. But say training for ushers and greeters has been pretty casual and sometimes just on the spot, or you follow someone around. I hope that you guys will come up with funding and timing and reprioritizing activities so that once you do schedule an opening, that you schedule what the Glen Allen UU Church Board did, which is they said, once they've decided to move to a new phase, there will be a 60-day time for training and implementation before that new phase takes place. I also want to invite you to consider the stresses and strains that there might be on church members who are like being doorkeepers for other church members. So I imagine many of you have gone to a grocery store where maybe somebody greets you at the door and is encouraging you to be safe as you go into the grocery store. Yes? No? Mm-hmm. Yeah? So, and like at the hospital, I have to be screened when I go into the hospital. So if we're going to have lay people do that, what is going to be the dynamic? Because already there is a dynamic where some staff are seeing some church members come and we're not sure why they're there. And in some cases, like if they're not wearing a mask, what do we say? And if I am charged with ministering to a person and I have to make a choice of how much to push back with rules and safety, where does that leave us? So I've been trying to think all day, what is my ask of the board? And I don't know how to make a certain ask that you can vote on. I think I'm asking you to be attentive and aware of these many layers of dynamics. And I have more that I might say in a minute, but that's enough for now.
Okay. Anyone else? Pam?
So I am curious as to who is making the decisions about who can come into the church right now and do what. And I want to make sure that we empower someone to be doing this and that we're all behind them. And I'm worried it's falling on Sean.
Yeah, it's been pretty much me. People have been requesting, and when they have, I've tried to schedule it so that I don't have multiple people here at the same time. There's been several people coming in here and doing work and being appropriate, but there's been other people who just kind of come in whenever they please, and we don't always see them, signing in or wearing their PPE. Or cleaning up after themselves. So that's what is concerning.
Yeah,
So
that's very concerning.
I'm very worried about that and wondering how we're going to stop that, because Sean, you're not there 24/7, and people have keys and they can do kind of what they want. How they're on their own.
Basically, yeah. There is no key log on who has keys to the building, unfortunately. So when the Glen Short gets the new doors put in, that is something I'm definitely going to do. Make multiple keys and make sure I have an account of who has keys. But I can control access from the social hall because I can delete the codes and put in new codes as I need to. But people who have access to the front door, I have no control over them. And I would I have no problem, booting people if I need to, but I would want direction from the board on exactly how they would like me to handle that.
Sure. And is there any rhyme or reason for these people coming in? Do they want a glass of water?
Well, it's all work for the church as far as I've seen. It's this church-related business, but I don't know if it necessarily needs to be in the church. So that's my only concern.
Okay. Alex?
In my reflection on this over the last 2 months, I think it boils down to human nature and love and passion and emotion. So Kelsey wanted to get married. That is passion. Jim died and Walter and Edith couldn't come to a Zoom memorial and they wanted to be together. Your electricity went out and you wanted to come to this meeting, so you went to the church building. I've been longing to get that office totally redone, and so I went and I invited other people to help paint. And so I can't say that I think people have passions that they're following.
Right.
And I think there is privilege. I've been using my privilege, and then I look back a few days later and I'm like, was painting really essential? I don't know.
Yeah.
And
Elizabeth.
And I think there's also that people have read documents such as this. They have a set of criteria, and you all are right. It's not in lockdown. It's in red phase. So they follow as safe a criteria as they are capable of following. And that's all of these specifications having to do with both the exterior space of ours and the interior. And they follow the basic rules. They clean handles and doorknobs, and they meet outdoors, and they stay more than 6 feet, and everybody's got a mask on. And then they do indeed walk in church to get what business done they need doing, and they walk out again feeling that they followed a protocol which is relatively safe. I mean, they sign in.
Right.
So it is sporadic, but it's not that people are not following a set of guidelines. They're not.
Yeah.
No, some people coming in the building are not wearing masks and not signing in.
Oh, okay, sorry, I don't.
Okay. Alex again.
Kay Frazier very astutely observed that our grounds are being treated like a public park. And when I met with religious professionals from across the region yesterday, and I heard about some of their grounds which are not being used because they just don't have as nice grounds as we do, it made me realize our grounds are truly, truly an asset. And there may be a way to pivot this whole thing and give super clear signage and super clear policies about how our grounds, which actually do have a ton of internal perimeters. And I apologize, I may have gotten behind on emails, and Kay may have sent a proposal that I haven't read, I'm not sure. Jude, you're raising your hand.
Kay asked me to tell you that I don't think she sent you anything yet, but that she is willing to do the outdoor component of this for the grounds with signage and procedures and all of that, if the board wants her to.
And for anybody who doesn't know, Kay used to be employed as I think a director of a whole city's Parks and Rec.
Okay. Yeah, I think we would be, grateful for Kay to create that signage. I think I can speak for the whole board that we can definitely accept that offer if she wants to do that. Yeah, I hear a lot of issues slipping through this system, and for the reasons that Alex said, people are passionate, they want to come to church, they want to check in. I mean, it's hard on everyone. You just want to see a living, breathing person. And this is where people go. Pam.
So I don't object to us having a few exceptions to sort of the general lockdown plan here and there. I think that Alex makes a good point that there are really important things that might need to happen from a mental health or spiritual or community standpoint. What worries me is that it seems random and doesn't seem controlled. And I think that's a recipe for disaster.
Yeah.
I think what we need to say something like, we're in lockdown with a few exceptions. And if you need to get into the church, and have an exception that you feel, then you talk to Sean or somebody else, and he looks at the policy and he says, okay. And frankly, I think we need to change the locks right away, because I have a key. I haven't gone in, but I know lots of people have keys and can go in. And I think that endangers us all and our staff.
How much longer until we get those new doors, Sean? Do you know anything about the timeline?
No, we don't have dates yet on. I know the doors are here, but I think they're still working on dates to actually install.
Okay.
I'll double check with Sally and Glenn Short, but I don't remember seeing firm dates yet.
Okay.
We have firm dates for the flooring, but not for the doors.
Yeah, because I don't want to rekey the locks and pay that money and then have them come 2 days later and install new doors and do locks. Jim.
I can just break off something in the lock.
That sounds great.
How many doors to the building, the main church building, have keys? There's the front door, obviously, and then what else would be keyed as opposed to?
Well, they're keys for every entrance, but the two that I know that are primarily used are the Edgewood Lane and the Summit House entrance, social hall entrances.
Mm-hmm.
But I have found keys for pretty much every door.
So it's not the same key all around the church. Every door has a different key. Is there any?
Yeah, every door has a different key.
Okay.
So are you going to get every door rekeyed to the same key?
I will do it. We need to ensure the safety of the building. I think the primary offenders that will come through the Edgewood Lane door.
Sure.
Yeah. I saw somebody's hand go up, and I'm not sure whose. All right. Well, it seems like I hear what Beth is saying, that we're not exactly in lockdown, even though that is how the COM moved forward with this. We're sort of in some weird twilight zone We're in the pre-phased, not quite locked down because we have some exceptions to completely shut. So I'm not sure what we call this phase. We can think of a name, but it sounds like we need to put more meat on the bones of the rules that we have in place. We need to beef them up a little bit and make it clear that unless you have some incredibly urgent business and get that business approved through the office, that you really don't have any reason to be in the church. Does that seem like everyone's sentiment? Where are we going with this? Beth?
Can I just ask one more thing? So when we talk about people on our grounds, there's gardeners. We know that our gardens are being utilized. So I mean, I don't want to ask details about what those people are doing because, you know, that's none of my business. But I'm assuming that people that are gardening are staying 6 feet apart. And if they come into the building, they'll wear a mask, but they shouldn't really be in the building. So I guess that's what Jude is talking about, that Kay will put signage that if you're outside, you have to be 6 feet apart, and then no entrance into the building. And
Yeah.
I mean, I think we just have to teach people.
Yeah, I think the rules that we have now for the grounds, for the outside, are sufficient. They just need a lot more signage. I think it's people coming into the building, especially if Kay is going to make signs for the outside, then that will be even more clear. I think the fly in the ointment is people coming into the building. Let's go Liberty and then Jude.
I was just going to check. I haven't been to the church door and seen what kind of sign is right out there, but is there something that says, you know, for access, call and put Sean's number on there? And then, you know, otherwise, you know, please do not use the church is in this restricted mode. Please do not, you know, use your key for access, call this number. And
there's none of this says don't use your key. It just says the church is closed. Please contact the staff for further more information. But I honestly, I don't think most people read those signs. We even have signage as soon as you walk in both doors from the social hall and from the front entrance with sign-in sheets and a big thing saying, hey, please sign in if you're going to be in here, that kind of thing. But I don't think most people notice the ones we have posted on the door right now. But yeah, ever since we shut down, we've had signs on the door saying the church is closed.
yeah, I think people using their key think they're the exception, right? Because that's kind of like for other people, but the people with the key think like, oh yeah, but I'm just doing my one official thing. Yeah, I don't know if we can beef up that sign for, you know, your peace of mind and safety. I hate to think of you like seeing someone walking through halls with no mask. I'm responsible for that. And then I just assume like.
Okay, let's go to Kay or Jude. Did you have something to say?
I just wanted to ask if for the signage, is there a budget for that, or is that just something that would be printed up at the church? How did you want to do that?
That's a really good question. Do we have some?
We can, at the church now with our new copier, we can do 11 by 14 color. Any bigger than that, and we're not gonna be able to do it at the church.
All right.
And we don't have a particular signage budget, but we do usually use communications budget to take care of stuff like that.
Okay. And are we talking about something like a for sale sign that we go pound out in the yard? Do you think that's sort of what we're talking about?
I don't know if that's what, or a banner or something like that.
Right.
All
right. We'll let Kay figure it out and then get back to it.
I'm pretty sure the police tape line do not cross yellow tape. We can get some of that pretty cheap.
Okay. I saw Jim and then Dan.
I want to understand. So I think we're having a great discussion about the inside of the church, but I want to understand what you talked about, Lori, with the outside. You said there are people using it like it's a public space. Do we care? Do we care if people are on the grounds of the church and walking around like at the park? Do we not care? I mean, I'm not sure I understood what you were making.
I think we care especially if it's our members. If they decide they want to hold a multifamily picnic outside, we need to put some parameters on that so people don't go crazy. As far as people just showing up and walking through the grounds,
That's what I thought you meant.
yeah, I don't think there's anything we can do about that. I think that, you know, we put out some good advice, wear your mask and stay 6 feet apart. But if it's, you know, a Sunday afternoon, no one is here to enforce that. I'm not sure what more we could do.
Okay, I wanted to understand that better. Thank you.
Yeah. Let's go Stan and then Sean and then Breck. Did you have your hand up too? Okay.
Okay, well, I mean, I'm with Pam to some degree. I'm one of the people that has a key to the Edgewood Lane door. Have had for like 20 years at this point. Nobody's ever asked for it back. But yeah, I think very strongly we need to change the locks as soon as we've got the new doors in. The one thing I would suggest is that we also start putting a sign up. We put a sign up now warning people that as soon as the new doors are in, there will be new locks and new keys required. If you think you need a key, now is the time to contact Sean to get one.
Right.
When the time comes.
Right.
That'll give them the heads up. It shouldn't come as a huge surprise to anybody at that point that they can't get in. Sean wouldn't be getting a phone call at 11 at night saying, I need to get into the church.
Okay, great. Let's go Sean and then Breck.
So for me, security of the building, we have to weigh in, you know, needs of the congregation with ability to enforce rules. I can, you know, we can make as many rules as we need to, but if we decide that, you know, these people aren't going to be allowed into the church, how am I going to enforce that? How far does the board want to go? So that goes back to what does the board want me to do when we do have people who violate the rules? Once again, I can be stern and wag my finger at them, but you know, they can just as easily ignore that. So how much do we want to, like say, make this a priority? And that's what the board's gonna have to decide.
Okay. Let's go to Breck and then let's try to wrap this up. We can, we still have all the other agenda items,
Yeah.
but let's go to Breck first.
Sure. For all those reasons that Sean just mentioned, I think that we will have a better chance of having compliance if we call the phase accurately to what's being and so I'm okay with saying we're in phase red. I think that could be a very restrictive state that requires a certain amount of communication to get access to the church. And I just, you know, in another, would just lift up something that came up in Alex's recent sermon about informal structures are part of those that privilege those in power. And so having exceptions, that makes it harder in a number of different ways.
Okay. So I'm not exactly sure where this leaves us. I appreciate what Alex said about coming out of this meeting with something that we can say to the congregation, that we're in this phase and here are the benchmarks that will move us along to the next phase. I don't know if we have, I don't know if we're at a point where we can do that yet, or if we need the committee to go back and ask them to write a more concise document of here's where we are. Once these 5 things happen, then we will move on to phase yellow. Does that seem accurate? Let's go Alex and then Stan.
And orange.
I'm hoping that as an outcome of this meeting, someone from the board will volunteer to write new language for the top of every single Friday email, which now says the building is closed, staff are working from home. That's false. I'm hoping that as an outcome of this meeting, the board will make decisions about budget to support what it means to live in an era of COVID and what kind of signage is needed in all parts of the campus in order to live up to our values, to be welcoming and safe. And I'm hoping that someone on the board would be willing to write an article for the Wednesday or Friday email about what it means to live in covenant during the time of COVID. And I'm hoping that Liberty or Aksha or somebody from the communications team, if such a thing exists, or Kay or Jude is going to say, here's our signage plan. And I hope that by the end of this meeting, you'll answer the question Sean has asked twice about how you want him to do enforcement.
Right. Okay, let's take Pam's comment and then let's table this for a while. We're going to come back to church opening near the end of this meeting. I want to give everyone a chance to reflect on all this and see where we're going to go. At the end of this meeting, we're going to talk about, we've had an outside request for Summit House to be used to house people as a refuge for people who are quarantining. It's a long story and I'll share it at the end and we can talk more about opening the church then. But let's move on and get through some of these other agenda items and give everyone a time to reflect on reopening. But let's hear from Pam last and then we're going to talk about name change.
So I suggest that we consider ourselves in lockdown and that with a few exceptions, and if people want an exception from the lockdown, that they have to clear it through Sean, and that we give Sean, guidelines, but use your judgment. I also suggest that we, as soon as is possible, Sean, with what seems reasonable to you, that we change the locks and that we don't give out keys until we know that people are trained in how to use the church and that they agree to the guidelines. So I don't see how we can do it a different way.
Okay. All right, let's pause right there then and think about all that we have lifted up. But for the moment, let's move on to the name change. Let me just look at the agenda here. Okay, so Liberty, this is you. Updates from the name change task force and what's going on?
Pretty much, I don't have any other updates besides the written board report. We are still asking people to host the cottage conversations, and Christine is pretty much heading that up. And so the idea is that we're going to be doing those into August, and we're writing up the training protocol for that and the questions. I guess the next thing maybe it's a little far out to do to pick the date for the congregational meeting.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how far ahead we do that, right? That we have that for September.
Right. So we can look at dates. We don't have to pick it tonight. I think both the name change task force and the finance committee probably need a little bit of flexibility still. Finance is crafting a budget right now. You guys haven't started the cottage conversations. So we have to notify of a board meeting 10 days out. So we still have quite a bit of time. Let's let everyone get a little farther down the road. We definitely have a whole nother board meeting between now and September, I'm guessing, that we can give everyone ample time to prepare. How are you doing finding people to host the cottage conversations? Is that going all right?
You know what? I need to check in with that. I think that the idea was that we're going to put something in the newsletter, but then Christine wanted to circle back. We have not had a meeting with all the members of the task force who I haven't even met yet. Okay. And so we are still a little ad hoc. She wanted to maybe do that one-on-one versus putting out a blanket call. And so I think we're still trying to figure out what the best approach is for that.
Right.
And I guess the only other thing would be to see if anyone has any questions for her or for us as we go forward. And she was willing to write up more frequent updates, but I said, we meet monthly and we could do it that way, or I don't know what else you all would like to hear.
Okay. Pam?
So when we were doing the task force to explore ordaining Leah, people seemed to find it was really helpful to have sort of a congregational conversation So I don't know if that could be done with Zoom, like where the sort of maybe the information that had been gathered from the cottage conversations or whatever was sort of presented in person. They seem to like that.
So you're saying that would be like before we went to the congregational meeting, we would have sort of a summary meeting?
Yeah, people seem to enjoy that. I only say it's a possibility, but it might be nice for people who don't go to the congregational conversations to the cottage meetings.
I know, yeah.
And you know, to have sort of the summary and just sort of hear what people are thinking.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that we should consider that.
Elizabeth?
So Lori seemed to insinuate you had plenty of time. I think you barely have enough time. I think you've got 8 weeks. And if you have a cottage conversation once a week with 8 people, you've only covered 64 people. And so both a Sunday afternoon general meeting, like Pam's suggesting, that can cover a number of more people. I barely see that you're going to be able to make sure to include enough people in the congregation. The part that ordination had was not only did we do a general meeting, but we knew there were 10 people who had strong objections. And so I see that you all are doing some of that with meeting with that professor, you know, that going through that is one direction, but the other is to make sure to keep on inviting people in a very proactive way into the cottage conversation or into a Zoom meeting, or all hell will break loose on your big meeting because you haven't done your homework, that everybody's already leaning in and going, yeah, now what do we do? Which now what do we do is, what do we name it? So I just, I really want you successful, but these are the weeks you make it successful because you've made sure everybody feels they've been heard.
Okay. More questions or comments? All right. Yeah, I totally agree with Pam. I think just a general information session might even slim down the number of cottage conversations that you will need to have, because I think people just want to gather and hear all your reasonings and what has been happening. And I think that will answer a lot of questions. You may or may not need to break it down into as many small groups as you think. So.
Well, I'm hearing 2 things. I think what I heard from Pam was that we do, after we have the cottage conversations, we gather the information and put together a final presentation on what we've learned. I'm actually would be pretty terrified of having just an open-ended free-for-all session, especially with comments. I think that the structure of the cottage conversations is supposed to provide, the boundaries for those conversations that I think could get heated and maybe just not productive. And I think the cottage conversation structure would I'm willing to have like an info post or something, but a meeting where people are all talking about the issue, it seems like we're going to be bypassing the process.
Pam, go ahead. I can't remember what you did. You had so many info sessions.
So what we did, which I thought worked really well, was we had sort of an introduction, and then everyone there got to submit questions, but they had to write them down on index cards, and then we answered them, so that we kind of screened out sort of what your free-for-all. That worked really well, and people seemed to like it. And then a lot of people would have the same question on the index card, and we'd answer it once. That makes sense? Yeah.
You've got the chat room. You can monitor the chat room. Even if everybody can read the chat room and you only answer the questions you want to, you're in charge of the chat room.
Right. All right.
We can also time out people in the waiting room. So if there's somebody's getting heated, we can make them sit in the corner for a while.
All right.
Well, I'll check back in with Christine about that. I'd like the idea. If it has some level of moderation in it, I can see it being effective, just to kind of warm everyone up to what's happening and get the wheels moving.
Okay. Great. Any more, Jim, comment?
This is going to be a ridiculous question that you can't answer, I think. But do we have any sense of where most of the congregation is with respect to this issue now? Because I feel like a year ago, it was a certain combination of beliefs. And now, after George Floyd and all that happened, there may be a large movement in one direction, such that we're anticipating a raucous conversation, which may not actually happen. And maybe that's naive, but do we have any sense whether people are saying, yes, it is time? And so we could, move quickly past should we to what should it be? And in other words, I don't want us to have to spend weeks and weeks bogged down in a question that is essentially going to be answered in a certain way. And maybe that's a naive sentiment on my part. I just don't know what the thinking is.
Yeah, well, we have decided that while in the cottage conversations, we will be getting names as well, like the suggested names will be part of it. And so hopefully that is actually going to come out. Hopefully we'll come out with a sense of what the name should be from this. We're going to follow the protocol because our meeting, that's what passed, the resolution passed to consider our name is sort of the topic at hand that everyone agreed to discuss. Anecdotally, we have found a tremendous amount of support, and people are concerned about the process and that we do it democratically and that everyone has a voice. But for the most part, a lot of people have said that they've changed their mind and they do support this. And so right now, the pulse, the finger on the pulse says that there's a strong support of it, but everyone wants to do it really conscientiously and really to be heard through the process.
Yes, can I respond?
Yeah, Jim.
Certainly, we don't want to assume that's the case and then go through and have a big or a substantial vocal minority that is still feeling we don't want to do that. I wouldn't want that to happen. But I just didn't know if that was likely or unlikely now, and I'm getting a better sense of it, I think, from what you just said.
Okay. All right. Well, Breck, last comment, and then we're going to move on.
I just wanted to throw out a possibility because I do think that I agree with Elizabeth that the time is short. What if the coffee hour might be a structure that you could latch onto? Like I could imagine a facilitator being one of the coffee hour facilitators, and if people that show up would like to spend that particular Sunday speaking, it could just be another forum that's already wouldn't be that much more work.
Love that. That's a great idea.
All right. Well, please keep us posted. You have full board support, and let us know how things are going. Next up, a quick debrief of the July congregational meeting, which I think went very successfully. Sean, Elizabeth, you were some of the key players. Breck, what did you think? How did that all go? Breck.
I just wanted to report that it was very difficult to count hands. I don't think that's a really great way for, they weren't consequential votes, but it was the thing that made it difficult was if it was just counting hands, that's one thing, but there are a number of people that are in the meeting that aren't voting members, and that made it much harder to kind of do very quick addition, subtraction, and get. We all came up with different numbers on every single vote. But that being said, I don't think that we need to record hand votes for approval of the agenda or some of those larger procedural issues, unless it really was an unusual situation. So I just wanted everyone to be aware of that.
Thank you. Anyone else? Elizabeth, and then Sean.
I was amazed. When Breck said that he put the more screens up so he could count, I was just like, wow, you're so techno. I admire you. But what I realized is I had the chat room, and that when we really have a discussion, since we had no discussion, yippee, I got the job of the century. But next time, if we have a discussion, I didn't know how I would call on the people in the chat room one after the other, because at some meeting, the one meeting we've been in lately, they were talking about having it be pro, con, pro, con. Oh, it was the ordination group meeting. That indeed, the way that Robert's rules go, you really name the pro person and then a con person, then a pro person and a con person. I think when they're listed in the chat room, I'll be able to do it. You just wish me luck.
Yeah.
Or do
Right.
my best. I'm sorry, I'm going to change that. Wish me to do my best.
Right. Definitely something to think about. Okay, let's go Sean and then Pam and then Dave.
As far as from my viewpoint, I got a lot of great feedback on Election Buddy. Everybody liked it. I didn't really hear any negative feedback, which is kind of unusual for something. Usually I get something, saying that was horrible, I hated it. But all the feedback I got was positive. We had a lot less issues than I was anticipating, with only 2 members really having trouble, and we only had one phone call in, and she gave us feedback that she felt very taken care of. So she was very happy with the attention she got. The one thing I found weird was, I think, Breck, we had 109 attendees. Was that correct?
Yeah, somewhere in there. Yeah.
Yeah, and then we had 115 people actually vote. So yeah, that was interesting. So maybe some people didn't show up.
No, you had 2 people in some. There were 2 people in some of the screens, so you had 109 participants in this participant list.
Yeah, I think Breck took account for that.
Yeah, I know. I counted for
sorry.
that. It did make me wonder if, for some of those larger votes, if you would have to cross-check against the people that were marked off in the attendance of the meeting, because everybody,
yeah,
the entire congregation gets the email to vote, but not everybody goes to the meeting.
That's very true. And we had about 15 people vote actually before Lori called for the votes. So yeah, they voted even as soon as they got the email, basically.
Yeah.
But altogether, I was really impressed with the Election Buddy.
Okay, let's go Pam, Dave, Alex, Jim. Pam.
So I think in the script, we'll be asking people to put pro, con, or asking for information right beginning. So you'll be able to screen those. And then I think maybe what we ought to do, Sean, is on the Election Buddy thing, make a big note saying, please don't vote until after we finish the discussion. But then I think we have to have people on their honor. I don't know.
All right. Dave, Alex, Jim. Dave.
Just as being a counter the last time, it was, difficult, and I didn't have the advantage of having multiple screens going through. But during some of those just hand votes, am I correct that during regular meetings, we don't take into account that their members are not when they're voting for that particular thing? Do we approve the minutes? Yay,
Yeah.
nay, and
We do give out the different colored cards usually, so it allows people to raise their card, but
Right.
officially you're only counting the particular color.
Correct. Alex, Jim, and then Stan.
I thought you guys did awesome prep. I do think there's still a little bit of learning curve. I've seen another group where there's 3 people monitoring the chat room, 1 person for pro, 1 person for con, and 1 person for procedural. And then Lori, as moderator, asks the pro person, the con person, or the procedural person to say what they're seeing in the chat room. Secondly, I saw that people were given permission to vote in the following manner, but I understand that will disappear, and it made me wonder how those votes were being counted.
Yeah.
And thirdly, I didn't feel that it was very democratic that somebody could have a black screen and say that they were present as a human being at a meeting and then say that they were voting. And I think that you guys might want to consider saying that you will only count votes from people that you can see.
Excellent. Jim, and then Stan.
I don't know if you would consider this as I'm not sure what the issue is for counting votes. I think it just takes a long time for people to stand there with their hands up, right? And then you have to go through it. So could you, and there might be 3 or 4 screens, but could you take screenshots, the technological solution? Take a screenshot, move on, take a screenshot, move on, take a screenshot, move on, take a screenshot, then look at the screenshots you've taken and count from there. Just make sure it's everyone. We're about to take a screenshot. Hold your hands up for the next 10 seconds.
Yeah.
You know,
That's
and then you might be able to go back to the screenshots and know who's got their hands up or not.
That's a great idea.
I think that's a really good suggestion for a vote that you might not anticipate, is not one of the ones that's going through election buddy, but that ends up being
Right.
close.
Right, exactly.
Which is probably very seldom.
Okay.
Although during regular meetings, we have everyone hold their hands and keep them held until everyone has a chance to count.
Right.
So there's not a whole lot of difference there.
All right. Stan.
Yeah, a couple of things. One, yeah, I like the idea of the screenshots. I was one of the counters too, and I was having a much harder time than I expected to. And at least part of it was because of all of the people who either just had a static image up or had a blank screen, and I just couldn't tell on them. But the other thing I want to say that I saw that was happening at least during the meeting at several places, and it's happened here at a board meeting too, there's somebody who tends to hold up signs when they're not supposed to be speaking. And that I also found to be very distracting. And I think we need to make it clear that that is not something that we're going to allow during the meeting. No, Alex, please don't.
I see the bottom row on my screen is going rogue here with this sign thing. Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, I find it very distracting when somebody's doing that.
Yeah. Yeah, I have to admit, as the moderator for the meeting, it is all I can do just to keep talking, because looking at 24 or 36 people at a time, it doesn't happen. I can't look at the chat room. I can't look at anything. It was only between me and Elizabeth. That was all I could manage, and then to keep talking. So you're right. Signs or anything, forget it. Sean. Oops.
We can stop video on those people and give them a bit of a timeout if it's really distracting. Like I can, like, in the chat room just say, hey, please put your sign down and enter your comment in the chat, and we'll get to you. And if they keep doing it, I can basically stop video on them and just like leave them off.
I think we can just start out the meeting and include that announcement from now on that, political signs or any sign, for whatever. Don't hold up a sign. It's too distracting. So we'll include that in the announcements. May I suggest we plan for another dry run and take this information that we're getting now with the screenshots and no signs and more counters. And I really like the idea of 3 people in the chat room, because I think the chat room the chat box is going to blow up at this meeting, and it's going to take 3 people to count and sort those. So how about if I'll send out a what do you call it when you take a poll? I'll send out a poll to see when we can all meet to go through another dry run and
Doodle poll, Survey Monkey.
The doodle poll. Thank you. I'll send out a
I know,
Beth.
I know that Laura Horn is also working very hard on this next congregational meeting, because she's already contacted me.
Right.
So make sure we talk to her about who else are players in this, because she is writing the script, I understand.
Okay. I'll put everyone on the board on it, everyone at this meeting tonight, Laura, and whoever else is willing to volunteer in this way. But I sense that this next meeting will require all hands on deck, because there will be a lot more chat. And I think we should anticipate our new interim minister doing the opening and closing for this meeting. Does that seem accurate, Pam?
So I was waiting until August 1st to contact her and ask her for how she feels about the whole thing, run it by her.
Okay. So when I put out a doodle poll for dates, I won't put anything before August 1st. It'll be the first week of August, and we'll do a dry run of the meeting. Does that sound okay? All right. In the interest of time, where are we now? All right, I think we've gotten through all of old business. Is there anything else that we didn't cover in old business before we keep moving forward here? All right, if not, let's take a short 5-minute
Staying
bio.
on time. You're
Sorry.
Staying on time. You're staying on time so well.
Thank you. I appreciate the
welcome.
commentary. Alex, before we go anywhere.
During the break, if anybody wants to talk to me and give me a request for what I write in my pastoral letter that will go out in the Friday email, I am eager to hear requests for topics during the break.
Got it. All right, it's 8:07, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Let's come back at quarter after. We'll really do it up for this break so that Alex has a chance to check in with everyone. Let's come back at quarter after and we'll continue. Thank you, friends.
So Jude, oh, is Jude gone? Darn. Are you still there, Jude?
Yeah, she is.
Yes.
Is it okay if I ask him how your mom is doing?
She's doing okay. She's not getting out much, but
Okay.
I guess like everybody else, Alex. So
Yeah. Well, please give her my greetings.
thank you. I'll tell her. She'll appreciate that.
Yeah. It's fun to see different faces here. Like Bab, I think I've seen you once, and Jude, I don't think I've seen you in person.
No.
Yes. No, this is our first.
I've seen her at meetings before. Yeah. And Bev, you're on personnel committee, right? Do you know if the personnel committee manual or the personnel policy says anything about well, can I write you offline about a hiring question in the manual?
Yeah.
Okay.
Losses. So, so I want to vote for the new name of our congregation. Should be the Unitarian Universalists. We don't need to worry about the word church or fellowship or anything. We could just, because somebody else in the New River Valley has moved their name to just be Unitarian Universalists. And I thought, well, why aren't we just the Unitarian Universalists? Because, you know, if we're Tom's descendants, we think we're it. Nobody else kind of is charmed by it. Never mind.
We can be the triple U, the ultimate Unitarian Universalist.
Right.
Bev, I
Well,
just texted you.
Jim Gorman is the one that suggested that we're the first Unitarian Universalist church. And you go, oh, yeah, church, so that we're FOOK. Oh, let's go to FOOK. You. All right.
Bev, did you see my text?
I did, and I don't think there's anything in personnel policy. Elizabeth, you might know too, about contractors being hired from within the congregation. And if we should put a request out to the congregation first.
I
don't think it is, but I'll look.
I'm confusing my boards. There's a conflict of interest thing, and I don't think we ever thought of. I don't think we've ever quite, like the babysitters and the lawnmowers and, you know, the little jobs have always.
Right.
Nobody questions that. Yes, you go within the congregation, but when you get to a bigger job, harder to know.
Well, I'm asking what the policy.
Yeah, no, and that's fair.
It's mainly for staff.
Yeah, and so that's what I mean. Once you get to staff, yeah, I think, but now policy, where is it? I just spent a long day today on policies. I should know. Yeah, I'll look for it this evening after we're finished, Alex, because I just read the last 12 pages of the policy handbook. What kind of snack did everybody go for? Look, I don't know. Look, they're all, everybody has a treat.
I ate raw green beans.
Raw green beans. No, that's not going to do it. I think I'm going for cherries. Sorry, everybody.
So for real, what do you guys want to see as a pastoral letter in the Friday email? I was thinking about trying to write about covenant and reopening, but I'm not quite sure how.
Oh, I really enjoyed your list and I wrote it down. So indeed, you're right that I don't think when I do the processing, I don't think that we're capable of answering all of your questions. It still goes to say that a discussion of the hard work that was just done and how when people tell us the results of good information, which restricts our behavior, how do we lean into covenant to agree that we all agree?
Why don't you write an article saying that from the perspective of a board member? I'd love for that to be shared with the congregation.
I still have my August 12th. Wait a minute, didn't I do an article just 2 weeks ago?
Yeah, okay. I'm gonna write down, can I quote what you just said?
Yeah. Try to get me to say it again, it'll be a problem, but
I got it.
I see right here on the bottom, I've got my August 12th thoughts, which I've got to get into her because I think the deadline is next week.
All right, another minute to go. If you have anyone that you want to me to send a gratitude card for, please put the information in the chat box and I'll copy it down and get those gratitude cards out. So if you can think of anyone, I see some are in here already. Sally Taylor and Carol Black for their work on the policy manual, and Anne for her time on the board. If you can think of anyone else, please put them in the chat box and I'll send them a card.
Do you know if Sally Kate has had gratitude cards sent to her?
Not since I've been writing them. I haven't.
Out there in the heat.
Yeah, I don't recall.
I'll put it in the chat room.
Alex, do you remember the name of the gentleman that Caroline said about the lawnmower? I don't remember his name.
John Nolan donated an entirely brand new lawnmower to the church, and Conrad says that it is like pushing a Roomba, and I do not know what that means.
Oh, it's like those little self-powering things.
It's the self-powering vacuum cleaner that you can turn on and it's set to vacuum your house while you're gone.
I have one of those. They are great.
But it runs into furniture and gives you error. Please move Roomba to a new location.
Mine hasn't done that.
Oh, well, I have an older one, so.
Funny.
I'd like to lift up Caroline too. I know she's doing a lot this month, and there's been the people that are involved in the FIFI program are really enjoying it, and I know that's a lot of extra time.
Great. Okay. Yeah, put them in the chat box and I'll screenshot them so I don't lose the information.
Lori, when you send out the invitation to do a dry run on the next meeting, could you include all the folks on the task force?
Yes. Thank you.
Beth Jager Landis, you just put a sweatshirt on? Beth Jager Landis, you just put a sweatshirt on? You tell that man to turn that air conditioning down. Those of us who are living on a green earth have our fingers out at him.
I know. Tell me about it. We just had an argument, but he made me this beautiful dinner, so I couldn't really argue too much, but I am freezing. Elizabeth just told me to tell you to turn the air conditioning warmer. And he says, put a sweatshirt on.
Oh, there you go. All right, let's keep it moving. Next up under new business, we're going to talk about the endowment income and the loans for Summit House. And Stan, this is your moment. What do you got?
First, a little bit of history. Some years back, endowment actually ended up acquiring all of the, at that point, remaining outstanding Summit House bonds. I don't know how much there was to that at the time, but apparently we didn't get around to paying those off along the way. And so back when Sally Taylor was last president, there was some negotiation that went on that ended up with, we're going to take the income from the endowment every year that was at that point running about $15,000 and use that to pay off $15,000 worth of the Summit House bonds. And that would end up paying them all off, hopefully by, I think, a couple of years ago. It is hard to tell at this point how long that hasn't been happening, but it seems not to have been happening for some years. It's unclear, frankly, where Christina kept track of the endowment fund, and it is unclear whether she or her predecessor did anything about paying off any of the Summit House bonds at this point. The bonds are being currently held physically. I think they're in a file in Sean's office. And I don't know what the total of the bonds there in the office is right now. I thought late this afternoon, oh, I wish I thought to ask Sean to add those up and see how much is still left. But in the meantime, Sean has done a lot of work, and y'all probably saw what he sent out earlier to the board about the endowment income. And if we combine last year and this year's endowment income, we've got about $13,000 that we can use right now to start moving this along in the right direction. What finance ended up deciding, because the bonds were all at that point in $5,000 increments along the way, was that we take 10,000 of that and apply that to whatever remaining bonds there might be, see which ones we can retire completely. The other thing we need to find out, and I'm not sure about the mechanics of this, Sally, again, negotiated something, but I don't know what the details were about whether it really is just take this $10,000, roll it back into the endowment fund as part of the principal at this point, and tear up and throw away the bond, or what. We're also supposed to be paying interest on these bonds to the endowment. This is stuff that's in the budget every year. But all of this stuff is in the budget every year. And as far as I know, that hasn't been happening regularly either. So we really need to firm up what's supposed to be happening with the endowment fund income and the Summit House loans. And that's what this is about.
Okay. All right. So it seems like at the moment we need to collect more information and then start paying these bonds down. We need to know how much we still owe on these bonds, and then how much of the endowment income we want to put toward that. Is that sort of where we are now?
Well, what we need to do with long-term is figure out how much we still owe on the bonds.
Okay.
For all I know, what has happened over the past 5 years is that somebody wrote on the back of each bond that this one was retired now. And if that's what's happened, then we've got some information there at least. Otherwise, we're just going to have to work on the assumption that none of the bonds that are still being stored in Sean's office have been paid off.
Okay.
Yes, Sean.
I've got 32 total. I did look in the back, like you said, and some do say canceled on them. So
Okay.
I guess I'll go through and find out exactly how many have been canceled.
Okay, great.
Okay.
That's really good to know. So we'll get that kind of information fairly quickly. But yeah, we do need to make this very, very clear that this is what we're going to be doing for the time being until we get the rest of these Summit House bonds paid off, because we really do need to clear them off the books. They're counting as a debt that we owe at this point. Even though it is to ourselves, it counts.
Okay. Pam?
So let me make sure I understand, because it sounds confusing to me. So long ago, there were human beings who gave money in turn and got a bond, and we used that money to purchase Summit House.
Correct.
And then at some point, we took money out of the endowment and paid off the human beings who held these bonds. And so it's kind of like the endowment owes the endowment to pay off these bonds.
Technically, the church owes the endowment, but back when I was first on Finance Committee, back in the early aughts, one of the things that Finance did every year was take the surplus that we had and decide where we were going to apply that. Some of it was going to go to the operating reserve, some of it was going to go to the building reserve, and some of it was going to go to retire Summit House bonds. And every year we would contact whichever person it was that was in charge at the time of who had which bonds, and find out who was ready to let them be retired. Because the other thing was that they had a really good interest rate at the time. They were paying like 4.75%, which was great. And a lot of people didn't want to necessarily get them retired real quickly. But after it got down to a certain point, yeah, that's what happened, was that the endowment committee at that time decided to go ahead and acquire the remaining Summit bonds. And we were supposed to pay off endowment fund from church income, not from endowment income. But that sort of quit happening when we were paying it to ourselves.
So let me make sure I understand. So what we're saying here is whatever income we get from the endowment, instead of including that to sort of support the works of the church or to help out with the budget or to provide a safety net, that what we would do instead was use that money to go back into the endowment in the way of paying off these bonds.
Right, that money would then convert into principal for the endowment and not be available for use for the church anymore, but the bond would also be retired and not count as a debt anymore.
And so I guess the big question would be, sort of how secure are we with the regular budget, and given how the year is going, that we can afford to do that?
Given the amount of income we get from the endowment, that it's not enough that's really going to help out with the budget. We're talking at this point, last year was fairly good. We had like $8,000 in endowment income between the 2 years, last year and FY19 and FY20. We come up to a total of 13,500. So as far as budgeting is concerned, that's not that much of a concern.
All right. Sean?
The bonds here, the $160,000 worth of bonds, actually there's a note attached to them dated November 7, 2013, stating that they've all been paid off, and all of them say canceled on them.
All of them?
Wow. Okay.
Apparently, Stephanie did, Loan had got this information, and the Board of Trustees got a copy of it as well.
Okay.
So what's the date on it?
The paperwork I have is dated November 7th, 2013, but the person who had the bonds, C. Waverly Parker, attorney at law, says on December 13th, 2012, the church paid off the last of its notes, for which I've been his paying agent.
Okay, that might have been when endowment acquired them.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, let's check with Stephanie on that, since she seems to have been involved there.
In my earlier stint on the board, there was a plan. Has been since 2013. It was going to be to pay $15,000 per year to pay off $60,000 towards the bond. And I think we got through a couple of those years, and then had a couple of hard financial years when we weren't able to do that.
Yeah, and what's showing still on the balance sheet is $125,000 for the bonds.
I don't remember that figure, but I'm
Yeah,
not as close
so
to it.
that's why all of this is so confusing. You say there's $160,000 total there, Sean?
Yeah, I've got 32 at 5,000 each.
Okay. Okay, well, I think we can assume it got down to 125 because somebody kept records for it up to that point.
I'll keep looking around, but these are the only ones I've seen so far.
Yeah, no, I believe you. Like I said, it was something that Sally was bugging me about back when I got back on finance a few years ago, and I was never able to get any clear information from Christina about it anywhere along the way. So yeah.
I would like to move that finance complete, put on next month's, next month's agenda and find out the results, because we've got nothing to decide till you know.
Yeah.
Well, one thing we can decide right now, and this is what finance was recommending, is that we go ahead and take $10,000 of the $13,500 in income from FY19 and FY20 from the endowment, and use that to buy down $10,000 worth of those bonds. Go ahead and do that now, because we can. I think it's safe to assume we have much more than $10,000 in bonds that haven't been paid off.
Unless they're all paid off. I mean, that's the question. That's a very
It's very
gray.
It's very, very unlikely. It clearly would not have happened even at $15,000 a year since 2013.
Well, why don't we? Yeah, I don't know. Do you want to check with Stephanie, or we can go back to the November 2013 board minutes and see what happened then, and try and track this down? We can set aside $10,000, but it's hard to know based on that note. That note says they're all canceled.
Yeah, but
that's by the endowment.
Yeah, that note was from Waverly Parker, which was one of the names I couldn't remember when I was talking earlier.
Okay.
He was the attorney that was keeping track of who owned which bonds. And so as far as he was concerned, once endowment acquired all of them,
okay,
they were all taken care of.
His obligation.
And again, that date tracks with that time, with when I think that sort of happened. It had to have been after 2012, because I left finance committee in 2012, and that had not happened yet. So that has to have been what that note was all about on the back of it, as to whether or not they have been paid off to the endowment. That makes a big difference, because right now that's a fairly large fraction of the endowment is the bond value.
Sure. All right. Well, do you want to make a motion to pay $10,000 toward these bonds, and then we will put this on the agenda again for next month's meeting to really get some more information around this. How much exactly do we owe on these bonds?
Lori, I'm not comfortable with us voting on the $10,000. It'll still be sitting there next month before Stan goes and gives us a little more precise information about the endowment. So I'd just rather us put it off.
Okay. Anyone else?
I understand. I understand Elizabeth's point, and I can't argue with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would like to have more information too at this point. So far, the most information we've been able to get is from Sean's work trying to figure out how much we actually made in endowment these last few years. And that has been very useful.
All right. Liberty, let's go there. Liberty.
Oh, I was just reiterating that I'd like more information too. And I feel like this is part of the larger budget discussion. I'm kind of, I don't want to give up that $10,000 when, you know, it feels like part of deciding the whole operating cost for next year. Am I wrong?
Okay.
Yeah, no, that's not going to, right now, we are very unlikely to have anything other than a surplus next year. The $83,000 loan is something we can regard as income, given the current rules on it, and that is making a huge difference in budgeting. So, and even in a normal year, $10,000. First of all, it's not going to be $10,000. That's over the course of 2 years. It's just not going to make enough difference in the budget aspect of things that we should not pay down a debt that we have on the books.
Okay. All right. Well, then, anyone else? Anyone else want to chime in on this one? All right. Let's get some more information and come back to this next month. I sense this has been sitting on the back burner for a while. Stan, you don't think it's going to make another month? It's not going to make a difference to hold off.
No, this is just the first opportunity we've had to actually talk about something with some real information.
Yeah,
about
yeah,
it.
agree. And I think one important aspect about the endowment is, you know, people who are considering putting TJMC in their wills really pay attention to how we manage the endowment and how that money is used. So we're wise to address this and not just leave it sit on the back burner. Yes, we could pull that money out for operating costs, but if we're obliged to pay the endowment back to, you know, keep it all above board, then it seems like we could go either way. But I just want to lift up that people really do pay attention when they're, you know, writing out what they're going to do with their money when they pass on. We just need to be careful when we use the money from the endowment. So that's it. All right. Next up is planning for a board retreat. Every year we sort of gather the board together and decide what our priorities are going to be, how we're going to move forward. Just a whole, we can't say, you know, a 5-year plan like you would do with your life, more like a 12-month plan, where we are now and where we want to be at the end of the year and how we want to get there. So I met with Linda for a little while today, and I think she would like to be in on that. She suggested probably the beginning of September, because already August is getting, you know, some dates filled up. I would like to put out a doodle poll, what some convenient dates for people are. Again, it is as likely as not that it will be a Zoom meeting. And I'm looking for some volunteers to help put together an agenda to talk about what we're going to do, and a chance to get to know each other. We do have a new board member, so we'll need to haze Jim a bit before we can move on. Jim, go ahead.
Yeah, it's a little dangerous to raise your hand because you're not sure whether I'm trying to answer a question
Right.
or volunteer.
Yes.
But my question is, this would be my first retreat. How long does the retreat take? Is it all day, 1 hour? What is it?
What is it? Someone can speak to this.
Week or two.
Week or two? Okay, great. Alex?
It has usually been all day, say from like 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. But the best practices on Zoom that I've been seeing in religious leadership is not to try to get people to be creative on Zoom for more than 2 hours. So what I might suggest for this group would be like 9 to 11 in the morning, and then again 3 to 5 in the afternoon. But encourage people in the middle of the day to go do something spiritually reflective or nourishing, or something that then they will bring back to the group.
Okay, good advice. Anyone else want to chime in on it? Jim again?
Further question. Would this be on a weekday or on a weekend?
That's why I'm going to send the doodle poll out. Typically, we've taken up a Saturday and met at someone's house, and
all right, thank you.
There's beer afterwards, but I don't think we're going to do that this time. We're going to have to think of another plan. So,
what? No beer?
Yeah, well, you could bring your own
No
beer.
beer?
We'll figure something out. So I'll get a doodle poll out, and let's think about that for a while. Brett?
I'll volunteer.
You volunteer? Great. Breck and I are coming up with an agenda. Anyone else want to hang out with us? And Liberty, thank you. Great. All right, I'll send out a doodle poll and get an email going, and we'll come up with something at the beginning of September. So look for that in the future. Next up, planning for August 11th and 12th. I think Elizabeth and I talked briefly about this. Elizabeth, did you agree? Are you going to write the email, the all church email for that day? Or am I? I talked about this last, I don't know, all the days run together. At the last meeting, I said I was signed up to write the Wednesday email for August 12th, but I have recently written an email on social and racial justice, and I think it was pretty long, and people hear from me all the time anyway. And so I'm wondering if anyone out there would be interested in writing the Wednesday email for August 11th and 12th.
Well,
I asked Linda Dukes.
Well, no, that wasn't, because since then, now Alex has to catch me up. Laura Horn has people submitting their thoughts for the service on, I've forgotten, Alex. Tell me what it really is.
August 2.
Okay.
Yeah, but that's when you submit it, but doesn't she have it ready for actually that?
No, the worship service is August 2.
Oh, so you're talking about a worship service. I'm just talking about a Wednesday email that goes out to everyone. I had asked Linda Dukes to write that email because she came up with a curriculum on racial justice, and I was hoping that she could talk about that. That seemed to be a very positive message, but Linda's plate is full, and so she cannot write that email. I'm looking for suggestions for someone, or I'm looking for someone to raise their hand who would be interested in writing the essay that we send out on Wednesdays and Fridays. I think August 12th is a Wednesday. If anyone,
indeed, I did offer.
Yes.
Because I did do an outline, and as I think about it, I have a couple of poets that I might reach out to who are relatively well-known poets in the community for speaking for our feelings at such times.
Okay. Can I hand this off to you then?
Yeah.
Okay. I am now handing this off to you to come up with someone to write something meaningful and turn it into the office by August 11th to go out in the August 12th email. Does that sound okay?
Yep.
Perfect. Thank you. And what else? So now we're back to our final topic, housing people in need in Summit House. So there's a not too long backstory. I got an email last week from Frank Dukes, who is connected to a woman at a nonprofit called CIFF, and I can't remember what that stands for. Charlottesville Immigration Freedom Fund. And what's
Immigrant Bond Fund.
is that what it is?
Well, not only is it the Immigrant Bond Fund, but we just sent them some money because they were a social action collection. So in the midst of all this, you should realize that $2,272.34, sorry, Sean, that wasn't exactly right, landed on their inbox.
Well, I think those are two different. The bond fund is different than the Freedom Fund. But regardless, the Freedom Fund is composed of mostly attorneys and social justice advocates to get people out of the ICE detention center down in Farmville. They're committed to helping these people, representing them, figuring out, how to connect them in the community and provide them with legal representation. So Frank contacted me that CIFF contacted him regarding a gentleman that they were getting out of the ICE detention center, and he had to quarantine for 2 weeks here in Charlottesville before he could get on a bus and go to his family down in Texas. And since we have already been housing people in Summit House, this did not seem like an incredibly difficult request to grant. There were going to be hoops to jump through, cleaning, and who's bringing him food, and so on and so forth. And we were all on board with helping this man. And then a second email came that he had tested positive for COVID. And then another email came and said, well, he personally didn't test positive for COVID, but 90% of the people in the ICE detention center were COVID positive. And so we were just going on the assumption that he was COVID positive as well. And that greatly changed how we were looking at housing this man in Summit House. So the email chain sort of blew up as we tried to brainstorm how to help. What could we do? Could we house him? There were all sorts of things going around because clearly everyone wanted to help this man. And to make a long story short, CIFF eventually bought him 14 days in a hotel, and he is quarantining at a hotel somewhere here in Charlottesville. What I want to bring to the board is this could happen again. Part of the reason that we couldn't do it now is because the yard sale is in Summit House. That would have been our first choice for where he could have quarantined, because it's been used for years by Pacham to house people, and it's possible. But the yard sale isn't going to be there forever. Eventually they are going to be done, and Summit House is going to be a big house with no one in it. And I'm going to guess that we will get another request like this, especially as case counts go up, winter is coming, and we're a church. And I messaged Beth, who talked to her social worker, if you were a homeless person and you test positive for COVID, or if you were an out-of-towner or whatever, if you don't have anywhere to go, where do you go? And Beth, tell me if I'm wrong, I think your social worker said you go to a church. So where do we fall on this spectrum? What do we want to do about it? And this sort of ties in with our reopening of the church. Can we reopen it for a single person who's in need? So we've got about 15 or 20 minutes left on this meeting. Thoughts? Elizabeth, let's start with you.
I'm going to make it even more complex for you so you can dance around it.
Yeah.
Pacham doesn't start till October 24th, but at that point, they are looking to house the women in a single place, and there would be anywhere from 10 to I mean, they right now have 10 women. They're now at La Quinta Hotel, which is, they got a state and federal grant to house all of the homeless, 60 of them at La Quinta, each in their own room until October 24th. And we are feeding them. So Pacham is dancing the community dance to say that it's no church. Nobody wants them moving from church to church because of all the things we all just discussed. So if they could find a building such as Summit House and declare it to be a month or two location, the world would feel better about the movement of homeless people from place to place. They are also trying to buy a hotel, so this might not be a true request from them, but that too is on the table for the board to say, is Summit House a place we can regard as a space where people could either be quarantined or could find sanctuary?
Elizabeth, is La Quinta allowing people to stay for the entire day, or is it the same policy where they have to be out of the rooms like they were out of Summit House and they couldn't come back in until 6 p.m.?
I think they have the room all of the day because the idea for the state and federal grant was indeed that homeless people without having a home to go to are more transferable of COVID. So you're saving a community by making sure that they are housed.
So if this gentleman, if this gentleman had gotten in contact with Pacham, do you think they would have?
So the big rule that Pacham made and had to is that the jails and the prisons would have exited people with no home straight to Pacham, and it's an emergency shelter. They would just get around the fact that you exit people to a home or to their family. So that has been a longstanding rule that the prisons and the hospital and the jails can't declare an emergency shelter as an exit strategy.
Okay, all right. More comments? Beth?
I am all for Pacham, of course, and being at our church. I just think that going from our incredibly restrictive policy that we just went through, that was all those pages with all that data. I don't know how we're going to implement that with people who are not our own, and I don't know. I think we're a long way from trying to figure out how to house people on our campus during COVID. I mean, I think that's going to take an all meeting. I know we're not voting on anything right now, and we're just kind of putting it out there. But I think we're a very long way from deciding that this is something that we can swallow when we're not even able to decide on how to have 10 people at church on the grounds at one time. I don't know, it just seems like it's such a fighting thing because if we have 30 women on our campus with Pacham, or it's probably not 30, realistically it's 10, right? I don't know, we're going to have to change a lot of the rules that we just talked about being very important to us. So, yeah.
All right, Stan.
Yeah, didn't we decide back in April, I believe it was, that we were going to allow some Pacham people to be staying in Summit House? As I recall, that ended up not happening for some reason. Okay, I had a couple there, but yeah, I mean, I don't know how we can have said that back in April and then now say, no, we're not going to be able to do it in October.
Alex?
Given the changing science and given the changing human understandings of what it means to be safe together, I believe it is perfectly reasonable to say one thing in April and say something different months later in the middle of a pandemic.
Okay. Pam, and then Sean.
So my understanding when we discussed this, whenever it was, April or whenever, was that the Pacham people had their plan and that they were very, very prepared for this, and that we trusted them to abide by all the safety regulations. And all we were saying was, all our responsibility was going to be was saying, you can use this house, keep it safe. So I don't know that we have a lot to go through. My understanding is that the Pacham people have done that work to figure out how to keep everybody safe.
Okay. Sean.
So for me, the biggest difference between Pacham and this instance was that we had an infrastructure in place for Pacham. We had an agreement, a safety agreement that modified our pre-existing agreement with them. We had volunteers who were helped to feed and clean up before and after. And Pacham also had someone stay in the house whenever there were residents there. Whereas this person would pretty much be flying solo. And from what I saw, there was no real setup for how to feed them, how to make sure that they were okay. If they needed a translator, would we be able to provide one? If they needed medical assistance, how would we provide that? So for me, that was my biggest concern is, we could give this individual housing, but how would we make sure that that individual stays healthy and stays well under our care?
Okay. Anyone else?
So I guess, I probably said this in April as well. I think that we are a church with tremendous resources, and that we go through a series of questions about how we feel safe using our resources. And then because our resources are real estate heavy, when we talked about it in April, we talked about how we wanted the church building itself, because we had staff there and we had the wanderers in, we had our own congregants occasionally using the building. It was a very different question than if we had a standalone building where we could put barriers between, and there are emotional barriers as well as not necessarily signs and an electric fence, but a barrier between a building we were offering to another group of people to use, because it was a resource we're not really using. And the problem we had with this gentleman was that I asked all of the people who were volunteering at the yard sale, and to a woman, they said, I'm very much in favor of housing this gentleman, but if you house him at Summit House, even if it's upstairs, not downstairs where we're working, we cannot come back. That all of us look behind us at loved ones who are more vulnerable than we are, and we can't expose our loved ones to that, which is, that's for me the classic answer. So there is that sort of difference of when you offer your resource, are you exposing your own selves? And if there's a delineation that you're not, then when are you being, let somebody else do it and you have the resource to do it? And that's, when the conversation Lori's talking about, it started to become, well, can we just throw some money at it and not take responsibility ourselves? And I got very uncomfortable, because to me it was us saying, well, somebody else should take the risk for this fellow. We don't want to. And that's the fine line we dance here with COVID, is our vulnerability and our willingness to lean in to be helpful because we have the resources to be helpful. And I don't have an easy answer there, but it's where I get.
Okay, let's go Pam and then Breck, and then let's go back to talking about phased in opening. Pam?
So I certainly would support having people use Summit House if they have a plan for supporting the people in Summit House, and they have a plan for keeping everybody in Summit House and the people who are helping them safe. I've I believe in that. And that would be for the Pacham people or for someone coming from an ICE detention center. But I don't want to endanger our people. I don't want to endanger our auction people, and I don't want to endanger our staff.
Okay. Brett.
I agree with Pam. It seems like Pacham has a system and a structure that helps alleviate some of our concerns as a congregation. I just wonder if there aren't other ways and other possibilities. I wonder, with the resources of our congregation, if there aren't other potential living situations, conditions, places, extra rooms, houses that aren't being used, financial resources, or resources to provide food, if there are not other ways that we could find a way to make a situation not just seeing Summit House as the only solution.
Right. And I think that's sort of how it concluded, that CIE bought this gentleman a hotel for 2 weeks, and they were going to get back to us through Frank Dukes if there was a sign-up sheet for meals or clothing or help with his bus ticket or any of the other things that he was going to need. It wasn't just, I need a place to stay. It's, I need a place to stay, and the only thing I have is the clothes on my back. So yeah, we may yet cross paths with this gentleman to help him. Alex?
As long as we're talking about how to use our real estate resources in line with our values, we could really be proactive and reach out to groups that we know need space. Like if the public schools are doing small pods of preschools and they're looking for a place to have preschools, if we know some other low income or under-resourced group with needs and Summit House could help them be safe during this pandemic, and just commit for the year, that could be a really brilliant way to match our resources with our values.
Excellent suggestion. All right, let's move back for the last few minutes of this meeting. I'm afraid we're going to go over time tonight because this phased-in opening is taking a lot of bandwidth for us today. I think we're probably all good, and correct me if I'm wrong, if we ask Kay to make some sort of sign for the yard describing the policy that is in place now. The yard is available for use with, I can't remember what it says, under 10 people, social distancing with the current policy. That's my understanding that what, Kay, 5 people? I don't know. I can't remember what it is. But whatever the current language is on using the grounds, does that seem okay to everybody? Give me a hands up if that seems like a good idea, that we can direct Kay to go ahead with her signage. Okay, I think I'm seeing everyone's hands go up. And then the next part is, it feels like we need some language to describe where we are now on the timeline. I hear a lot of people saying we're, yes, in lockdown, yes, in phase red, maybe in the middle. So I think we need to clarify exactly where we are now, and then talk about the rights and responsibilities for members of where we are now. If we can have, under 10 people weddings and funerals, that's fine. But, it has come to our attention that everyone who can pick a lock has been coming into church, and not all of them are signing in or out. And we need that to stop, and give everyone a heads up that the doors and the locks are about to be changed, and not everyone who currently has a key is going to get a key. We're going to shrink that number to maybe half a dozen. And beyond that, if you want to come in the building, you're going to have to contact one of those few people, and they're going to have to vouch for you coming in and out of the building. Let's start with Sean, and then Pam, and then Dave.
Before we announce the restriction on keys, I would like guidance on exactly how we're going to restrict keys, because I'm sure I'll get a ton of questions about that when it happens.
Yes, agree. Okay, Pam?
So I want to suggest what I suggested before, and that is, one is that we determine that we're still in lockdown, but that we are having exceptions to that, and that for meeting certain criteria, and that we go ahead and put the locks on as soon as is reasonable. With Sean, if they're going to put the doors on, great. We don't have to do it today. And that before we issue more keys, that we provide some sort of training and agreement that people will operate in a certain way, and that people who haven't done that training can't have a key.
Okay. Dave?
So we were considering within the COM that the phase red, the small groups, was, I believe there were a few groups that had already petitioned to come in and meet. Tai Chi was one of them, a couple of covenant groups possibly. I know Sean had a small list or idea of people that were petitioning him. And so, I don't believe that, I speak for myself, and I think probably the COM as well, that we don't feel that we're at that stage yet to allow that type of opening, even with permissions. And we were under the we did understand that there were some exceptions for workmen and for staff and for people that might have been helping to feed the community outside, to come in and use the bathroom, and do stuff like that, and that was still allowed even in the lockdown phase, as long as everyone followed the getting permission ahead of time, signing the check-in list and all that stuff. So I'm thinking that, at least in the COM's opinion, that we were under the hope that phase red was not going to be jumped into yet.
Yeah.
We had a few things that we wanted to do before we even got into phase red. We wanted to set up a training for safety captains, and each group that was going to have a small group of 2, 3, 5, 10 people here would have a designated safety captain that would need to go through some training, and we were going to work with Sean, and forgive me, I'm phasing out on the young lady's name. No, not Caroline. Who's going to do some videos for us?
Ellie Ransom.
Yes.
Yeah.
And making some, some training videos, making some training PowerPoints where people could come in, and not come in, but we could provide this training to those safety captains.
Sure.
And those safety captains would be responsible for making sure that their group, if they got permission, would follow those safety rules, but not starting this month.
Yeah.
Or even next month.
So do you think we would feel comfortable, since the COM and these other committees wrote this report, believing that we are still in lockdown, that we call our current situation lockdown with limited exceptions? Because that seems to be what we're aiming for. We're not allowing small groups in. We're not allowing covenant groups. we're not allowing scheduled groups to come in. If a person needs to come in, it, for better or worse, is only random that they are here. And what I hear from the staff is we need to figure out a way to end the randomness of people just walking in. I saw Stan's hand and then Jim's hand.
Rather than just say limited exceptions, I would actually prefer the term extraordinary exceptions.
Even better.
Anything to make it even less likely that somebody will think they will be included as an exception.
Okay, great. Jim? Jim, did you have a question?
Yeah, extraordinary, to jump off Stan, extraordinary, I view as a positive term because we use it for the fundraiser. How about unusual? Something like that. But in any case, what I really wanted to say was, I recall, I believe it was Pam recommending that Sean have the ability to grant the unusual or extreme exception. And I would like to add an amendment to that to help Sean out, is that we put together a small group, a committee that can help him out when he does, so he doesn't have to make that decision on his own. I mean, some of them may be very easy decisions to make, but you can imagine times when Sean's going to be unable or doesn't feel comfortable making the decision, and he needs a group to turn to that can help him make that decision. That's all I'm adding to that.
Okay, let's go.
We call that I have to ask my wife group.
Let's go Breck and then Liberty.
I was just going to suggest it would be even better if we could just enumerate the exceptions rather than leaving it fuzzy.
Yeah. I think it is enumerated now, but it sounds like people are trying to find some wiggle room in that. Liberty?
Oh, I just used the phrase restricted access.
Yeah.
Lockdown with restricted access. I think that if we come away with this, tell me if I'm wrong, Sean, but if we come away with this meeting, affirming that we're in lockdown with restricted access, would that be helpful as a phrase to use if somebody was coming in or asked permission, and you could say, the board has voted that and affirmed that we're in lockdown with restricted access, and I'm not able to give you permission, or I have to ask you to wear a mask according to what they just voted on. And is there anything more you would need besides that? I mean, as far as enforcing, I can't really imagine that you can force someone besides verbally telling them the expectations. Yeah. But maybe you could tell us what you imagine the situation to be like and what kind of support you would need besides just saying that we've made the vote.
I'm more than willing to do that. I think the biggest problem is that I'm only here limited. I'm only here 2 days a week. And while people have been better about signing in and out, I'm sure there's plenty of people who come in and out and don't sign the sheet. So I have, I can't tell if they're wearing proper PPE or not. I don't have that, that information to be able to say, look, I need you to wear this when you come in. I've got no problems with letting people know. I don't think I'll experience any issues. If I do, I'd definitely report it to the board if I need to. But I would like to know if it does get to a problem, what do I do? What does the board want me to do? When I was working for Target and I had a guest who was not following the rules and regulations, I had a lot of things to do in order to make my team feel safe, in order to make the other guests feel safe, and in order to make sure this person knew that what I was saying came with authority. I would like to have a similar kind of thing. So when I go up to approach a person, I know if it does get bad, I know what the board wants of me, and I'll have their support no matter what action I take, as long as it's within those guidelines. And then knowing when people are coming in and out is going to be the biggest thing in order to make sure we enforce those rules. So that's my biggest issue with creating any kind of rule, is enforcement and knowledge about when people are coming in and out.
Okay. So Would it be helpful to get more signage up on around the church?
No, because I think unless you literally make somebody walk over a sign, they tend not to read them, especially if it's someplace they feel comfortable and they come in and out. That once again, that comes back from my retail experience where, you know, a whole aisle could be on sale, but people will only buy from the one peg hook that's actually marked sale. So they tend not to read signs other than, you know, what's 1 or 2 words in big block print. If we put, I was joking about it, but I'm serious when I do say that. If we put yellow caution tape around the doors and said, caution, do not enter, quarantine, then maybe yes, they would listen to it.
Yeah.
But I think just because people are so comfortable with the building and coming in and out of it, it would take an extraordinary sign in order to deter people from coming in.
Yeah. All right. Pam?
So maybe we could prioritize getting the new doors and the locks. And then maybe we could have a sign-up sheet that people had to sign online before they came over to get in. Maybe we could inform people that if they don't abide by the criteria, either not wearing a mask or whatever, that we'll have to send their name to the board and the board will have to meet and decide how to handle that. Would that be enough of a consequence?
I think that's going to create a crazy amount of friction, and it's going to be like getting sent to the principal's office where we have to reprimand. But yeah, there should be some consequences. I'm just not sure what. Brack?
Just wondering, I know Sean is not naming names, but my guess is that we're really talking about a couple dozen people, maybe 20 people. I don't know.
I only know of the people that have been reported to me. Once again, that's only if there's somebody in the building. So there's been times, you know, where I've walked in and I've seen someone, you know, go to their car, or I see a car on the property and I have no idea who it is or where they are. You know, Caroline is here when I'm not, so she's here like on Tuesdays and Thursdays. So she'll tell me if somebody came in.
Right.
And sometimes it's, oh yeah, that person let me know, and I try to copy her on those if someone's going to be in the building. Like Sally does a great job, but she lets me know every time she's going to be in the building. But there is at least maybe half a dozen people that I know of that don't that come in pretty much whenever and don't let me know. But once again, since I'm not here all the time,
sure,
yeah, there might be more.
I just wonder if we could, if a preemptive communications with those people that we know have been around for both legitimate and maybe less legitimate reasons, if we could just have a communications directly with them, it might be more effective.
Yeah. So I guess what I'm trying to get to is some concrete action that we can take to help the staff. I hear Alex has suggested an email header going out in the Wednesday, Friday email that says something like, stop, you need to follow these rules at church, and basically there's really no reason for your physical presence to be at church except under restricted access. We definitely need stronger language in the emails, money for more PPE and things around church. That's a budgetary issue. And then putting out a whole nother email about being in covenant and doing the right thing. Don't come to church if you have no reason, even though you might have the code or you might have a key to get in this building. Please don't. I mean, we can come up with another email like that. But I think what I really want to get to here tonight is what is our language going to be, and where are we? We've got currently, as I put it again in the president's report, we're under lockdown and no one should be here, and I can't remember what else I wrote. Church remains closed except for the following cases. Do we just want to recycle that and put that back out to the congregation, or is there more that we want to say? I feel like we need to get some language out to the congregation and get in front of this. Stan.
Why don't we just copy and paste the section about the rules for lockdown situation from the report from the COM and put that in the Wednesday and Friday emails?
Okay. Do you think, are we comfortable saying we're in lockdown with restricted access until we meet the 5 or 6 bullet points that have been drawn up? You know, declining case count, contact tracing. Do you think that that is accurate, Beth?
I don't think we have to be that detailed. I think we just have to say that we have to live in covenant right now, and the board has decided that we are on lockdown except for certain exceptions. And this is for the safety of our staff, the safety of each of us, and I don't think we need details about how many cases there needs to be, because that's just going to have people calling about cases. Like we don't need that.
Okay. Jim?
To add to that, we can have a statement that says, if you don't already have permission to use the church at a specific date and time, and you come to church and enter, you are out of covenant. Just to make it clear, that phrase should be in there.
Okay.
So that people don't say, well, people can always in their mind say, I am an exception to this, for whatever reason.
Dave?
So I don't have any comment on the messaging, but I mean, maybe we could, I don't know, Sean and the staff would need to let me know if this is too hinderous. Take a page from what the Housing Residence Life Office is doing at UVA. So we're open from 8 to 5 Monday through Friday, but our front doors are locked. Our doors are locked. I shouldn't just say our front doors. Our doors are locked, and no one can get in unless someone lets them in. And I understand that people have keys and stuff, but would it be possible that after the staff come into work, they lock the doors, and we have a sign out there that says, if you have a previous permission or appointment to be on church grounds, please call this number to be let into the building.
Okay.
And then that would, maybe give a little bit of someone comes up and pulls on the door and they can't get in. And then they're like, oh, shoot, what's going on? And then they see the sign about what they need to do to get in. And may give them a pause before they just, oh, the door's open, let's walk in and go do whatever that we want to do.
Right. Okay. Anyone else? Pam?
So, I hear what Sean is saying, which is short of, yellow caution tape, it's going to be hard to keep people out because people think that they are the exception to any rule that we have. And I hear Sean saying, I need a plan, like like at Target, that we have, what action can he take? And Sean, I wouldn't know what that would be, but if you want to make suggestions, I support it completely.
Okay. Greg?
So I think if the big part of the problem is people with keys coming in and out of the church, I expect there's a technology solution to that problem. I expect we can buy something to put over the locks. Once the staff are in, put over the locks, and you can't get in unless you call somebody.
Yeah. Okay. And, with Beth's statement, I can say that for 20 years of telling people, go sit down and put your seatbelt on because there's going to be turbulence, people never took that seriously until I would say something like, because a cart is going to drop on your head and crush you, and really put a fine point on that pencil, it would just go in one ear and out the other. So I think there is something to be said with scare tactics and, really driving this home that for some people it's just all sort of loosey-goosey until you say, something really drastic. For some people, that's the only way to drive it home. Dave, I wonder if your group would be interested in drafting an email to go out within the next week or two that would talk about what you guys have been doing and what someone just said, that if you're coming in the church and you don't need to be here, you're out of covenant. Here's all the work that we have done. Here's all the ways that we have, studied this issue, and it's really not safe for us to be, just sort of wandering in and out of church. I wonder if you or someone on your group would be willing to put together, not to stick it in a Wednesday, Friday email, but for it to be its own separate email, to really try and get everyone's attention here, because this is a problem. We need to lift up that people are doing it wrong. You shouldn't be just coming to church, and if you do have an extraordinary reason to be here, you need to follow the protocol. Do you think someone on your group could write that?
I think we could probably do something like that. I think we would appreciate having some phrasing suggestions.
Okay.
From people. And they can, email me, and then I can share it with others about what we're going to do. I would also like to know if there are going to be any actual actions taken. Like, is the door actually going to be locked during, church business hours? And the only way to get in is via phone call to this particular number.
Right.
That way we can, reiterate that in there.
Sure.
So
you said you had no sense of when these new doors are coming in. Do you want to check with Sally and see how much longer? All right, because if it's not too far in the future, we might muddle through till the end of this week. But if it's going to be another couple weeks, then we can go ahead and talk about.
Lori, no, we're not after the enforcement. We're after the message. And I think when we started this meeting, many of us assumed that we were in small group, not in lockdown.
Yeah.
So I think that the result of this meeting has been that no, indeed, we're still in lockdown. And that's the biggest effort that Dave's about to make with the COM.
Right.
Is Greg's information that the numbers aren't down. You all finally noticed. We can't assume we're in phase 1 of small groups, even though we've had restricted access and exceptions. Please take note, we're still in lockdown.
Right.
And the doors are actually locked. I don't think it changes whether you get new locks, because your message is, please, everyone, we're not in the red zone. We're in the lockdown zone.
So,
and he just lifts that. Here's where we are now.
Right.
Here's where we're going, and we're not where we're going yet. We're still up here where we are now. I think everyone I know had an assumption on that we'd gone to phase 1 of small groups and outdoor meetings, and maybe not using the building, but maybe even considering small groups. No, we're not there. So I think that the message from COM is, we've gone through it, and we're telling everybody to back up. You started to move forward too soon.
All right.
I don't even think we need to wait to get the new doors and the lock change.
Oh, yeah. Start to say, quit coming in the building.
I don't think we even need to get the new doors and the locks changed to wait to lock the doors during business hours.
Right.
No, I just want to double check with Sean, because this means that he's going to have to get up from his office and walk through the church, let people in, and then also as they leave, lock the door behind them. And same with Caroline. That's going to add a little bit of extra step and time to their day. So I think, having input from them about that would be helpful.
hopefully that won't happen very often.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that won't happen. Yeah, I mean, I don't think we're anticipating a parade. I think that's what we're trying to avoid, is the people who feel they have to come tell Sean something in person. Maybe will be dissuaded from doing that. All right, so Dave, if your group can put together an email, and I'll go ahead and write a header that will start going out on the Wednesday and Friday emails. That sounds fierce and intimidating. Don't go to church unless you have some extraordinary circumstances.
And if anyone on the board has any phrases or ideas to put in this email, my email is simply daveshutt with 2 T's at virginia.edu.
Okay.
Send them to me by Friday.
Okay. And we'll try and get something out in the next 10 days. Does that sound reasonable, Dave?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And beyond that, I think just reiterating that locked down with restricted access. Breck.
Would it be helpful to put a vote of confidence behind this plan and say that the board has received this work and has adopted it as a structure for guiding our decisions? It's not complete, we know, but it has somehow it's.
Should we put it to a vote, or do you just want the board to acknowledge that we have received this information and we're on board, and we, confirm that we're not in phase 1, we're still in lockdown? Alex?
I think a vote of confidence would go a long way as a communication to the congregation, and will encourage the COM and the MAT to keep on doing work on behalf of the board.
Okay. Then I'll make the motion to acknowledge that because of the work of the COM and the medical advisory team and Alex and others, we're going to follow their guidelines and reaffirm that we are still in lockdown with restricted access. And we want to make that publicly known to the membership that we are still in lockdown with restricted access. All in favor? Oh, wait, we need a second. Somebody second.
Second.
Now in favor. All righty. Anyone opposed? And anyone abstaining? I think that's going to pass. All right. Alex?
I would like to say in a pastoral way to all of you who have been here for the last 3 hours that the work that you have done together is it is ethical and it is pastoral, and that a church is unlike any other place that any of you work. It's unlike any other place that any of you shop. It's unlike any of the institutions your kids go to, and you're doing great at grappling with what it means to be in covenant, and yay for religious leadership.
Thank you. That was very welcome and touching. Let's go to Pam, and then we're going to start shutting it down.
So I just wanted to make a request to Sean that, Sean, anything that you think of that would be a good policy that would support you in making these decisions or in enforcing these decisions, if you just let us know, we're behind you and we can formalize that.
All right. Thank you, Pam. All right. I apologize. This is running over quite a bit this evening, but a lot going on in spite of my naive belief that July was a quiet month. Things to do and communicate. What do we have, Beth? What did everyone just promise to do? You're muted.
Okay, now back to my, oh shoot, how'd that happen? Oh no, what just happened to my, I just pressed a weird button. Okay, things to do, communicate. All right, we are going to have Sean hopefully figure out the new doors and locks on these doors as soon as possible. Hopefully the doors are coming in from where they're ordered. But Sean will receive guidance by, I'm not sure who, we didn't say that, but guidance to Sean, who is actually going to be given these keys, these new keys.
Okay.
But the second and third things to do are a little bit easier. So planning for the board retreat, we have Lori, Breck, and Liberty. And then Kay is going to do the signage for our outdoors, I guess we'll call it a protocol for limiting groups and people wearing masks. And then the comm, or maybe I should just say David, but we can just say the comm will write an all church email reiterating that we are in the lockdown phase with restricted access. And Lori, you were gonna write something else. I didn't put that on here. Lori's gonna write.
A header for all the emails that will sound scary and intimidating so that no one comes into church unnecessarily.
So a header that goes out with each email, like the Wednesday wonderings or whatever that's called.
Correct. Correct. And also, what did I say? I'm going to send out a doodle poll for.
Oh, dates for the board retreat.
Practice meeting. No, a practice meeting for the congregational meeting.
Elizabeth, do you mind doing that? If you send out a doodle poll for the practice congregational meeting, can you take that? Okay. And anything else, Beth? Did we get everything? Did anyone else promise something that Beth didn't capture? Alex, and then Liberty.
Since I'm in the slot to write for this Friday's email, I think I'm going to write kind of a whole pastoral piece, and I will talk a little bit about what we talked about tonight in that whole thing. And that is not a substitute for what Dave is going to be putting together.
Okay. Liberty?
I just want to say that I'm going to talk to Christine about setting up an info meeting for the name change group, and as well as talking to her about using the coffee hour as maybe a cottage conversation time.
Excellent. Thank you. 1, 2, 3. All right. I think that captures everything. I don't even want to know anything from the timekeeper because it's late, but Elizabeth, as the process observer, would you please fill us in on all our things?
All right, so I gave you a half hour. I gave you 20 minutes for the reports and you took a half hour. And I gave you 30 minutes for the reopening conversation and you took 45 minutes. But thereafter, you lost it totally. So my only process is that at that first whole conversation, we came to several points at which you could have called for a decision to be made. And I thought it remarkable that you said, well, let's not make a decision right now. And then we go to the bottom of the meeting in order to make those decisions.
Okay.
It worked, but it's pretty weird.
Yeah.
And Alex even gave you the 5 things that needed a decision made, and you did manage to cover them all when you got to the bottom of the meeting. But maybe sometimes with hard questions, you need to circle for a while. I'm sure new board members and visitors went, what? Do they ever make a decision?
Yeah.
So I think it is that narrowing it to what are we talking about? Is there a decision point? Then let's make a decision and move on.
Yeah.
And
yeah, this definitely
I can't do any better. I'm not,
this took way longer than I anticipated. I knew it was going to take a while, but this did take a long time. So thank you for lifting that up. Okay. Are we at closing yet? I have to keep going back and forth. Yes. Beth, would you like
Okay.
closing?
Oops. Am I muted? No, I'm
No.
not muted. Okay. So I looked up closing words.
Wait, what? Who? Somebody had a question? Oh, I'm sorry. One last question from Jim, and then we'll go to closing.
Actually, it was sort of a joke question. Are they all like this?
They're all like this, even
They're
long.
all like this.
Man, we try and make this marathon.
Wow. Okay, that's it. I'm done.
Okay, let's see if I can read at 9:38 in the evening. Closing words by Wick. If you are who you were, and if the person next to you is who he or she was, if none of us has changed since the day we came in here, we have failed. The purpose of this community, of any church, temple, zendo, mosque, is to help its people grow. We do this through encounters with the unknown, in ourselves, in one another, in the other, whoever that might be for us, however hard that might be, because these encounters have many gifts to offer. So may you go forth from here this evening. Thank God it's not morning. Not who you were, but who you could be. So may we all. Amen.
Amen. Thank you very much. All right. Any parting words? Anyone have anything to share before we head on our way?
It was so cool to see everybody.
Yes, and thank you for being forgiving.
Agree. And once again, I apologize. This ran so long tonight. But
you did a good job, Lori.
It's good to see everyone, even if you are just little pixel dots on my screen. It's nice to see you all.
Yes.
So, all right. Thanks to everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
And well, I'll see you on Sunday.
Good night.
Sunday.
Bye, guys.
Good night. Thank you all.
Well.